What's up YouTube? Today's video is going to be all about Shopify sections. We're going to learn them from front to back. So you're going to learn how to build custom Shopify sections. You're going to learn how to add settings to those sections, how to add blocks, how to add presets, how to limit them, how to add tags, how to add translations to your sections. We're going to learn everything with sections, and we're going to do it pretty quickly. So if you're new here, my name's Coding with Robbie. I make videos on Shopify theme development and really just Shopify in general. So make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and we'll get right into it. Let's go. All right, so I got my theme code pulled up right here, and I'm just using the default Dawn theme. So to create a custom section, we'll just go in the sections folder. I'm gonna create a new file. We'll call it customsection.liquid. And now inside this file, we can start building our section. So every section is gonna need a schema. And the schema is just some JSON that describes our section. So let's put some brackets and add some properties. So the first one you're going to need is a name, and we'll just call our section custom section. The next is going to be settings, and this is going to be an array of settings that our section has. We'll leave it blank for now. And the last one is going to be presets, and we'll learn more about this later, but for now just put an array, and inside there it's going to be an object that has a name property. And for name we'll just go default custom section. And now above the schema, let's render some HTML. So I'll just do an h1 tag. I'll put hello world inside there. And now we should be able to render this in our theme. So now I'm back in customize theme, and every time you make changes, you'll have to refresh, but let's go add section and look for custom. And here's our custom section that we just added. So we can see our hello world text on the screen, and I'm just gonna drag this up to the top and hit save. And that's how you can render your section on the screen. So now let's talk about all the different properties we can add to our schema. So I got the documentation pulled up right here, which I'll link in the description. But let's scroll down, and here's schema, and here's all the stuff we can add to it. So we already saw name, and that just names your section. The next one would be tag. So if we did inspect our section, you can see that by default, it's going to wrap our section in a div. And tag allows you to change that tag from div to, you can do article, aside, footer, header, or section. So let's change ours to a header. So let's go back in here, and we'll add the tag property, and we'll say it's going to be a header. And now if you refresh, you'll see that it's header now. The next property is class, and that just allows you to add a class to that wrapper element. So let's add a class to ours. Let's just go class, and we want to add custom dash section. And if you refresh again, you'll see it has custom section added to it. The next property is limit, and this allows you to set a limit on how many times your section can be on a given page. And the only valid values are 1 and 2. So let's add a limit to ours. Let's go limit is equal to 1. And now if we try to add our section again, it's going to go, hey, you already used your 1 of 1, no more allowed. The next property on the list is settings, and we already have settings, but it's completely empty. So let's add a setting to our settings array. And to do that, it's going to be an object. And every setting is going to have 3 properties at least. So the first one is going to be type. This is where you define the type of setting. So let's just start with a text setting. The second one is going to be ID. This is just going to be a unique identifier for the setting. So I'll just call it text. And the third one is going to be label. And this is the text that's going to appear above the setting within the Shopify editor. So let's just put text with a capital T. Let's save that. And now if you go back to your section, we now have this text field over here. So let's put coding with Robbie inside there, and we'll save it. And now we're going to render this text within our h1 tag instead of the hello world. So to do that, where we have hello world, we're going to replace it with brackets, and we're going to put section dot settings dot whatever the ID was. So that would be text. And now it should render coding with Robbie on the screen, which it does. So there's a bunch of different settings types you can use within your sections. And I'll link this document in the description, but you have basic input types. And this includes that text one that we did. There's also text area, select range, radio, number, checkbox. And if you want to learn how to use one of these, you just click into it, and it's going to give you some example code. And there's also specialized input settings, and these are more smart, like, hey, link an article, a blog, get a color, a font, rich text, product list, video. There's a bunch of specialized ones, and again, you can just click into it and learn how to use it. So we'll cover some of these in this video, but we're not going to go through all of them. That'll be a special video of its own. Coming back to the documentation, the next property is blocks, and this is how you add basically sections within sections. So this is kind of for repeatable content within your section. So let's add our first block. So we'll go down here below limit, and I'll add blocks. and it's going to be an array, and it's going to be an array of objects. And the first property the object needs is name. So we'll name our block social link. The next property is going to be type, and this is just for us to identify what kind of block it is in our code. So for this, I'll just go social, and then you can have settings that are added to your blocks. So this will be an array and work just like above. So let's copy this setting from up there and we'll paste it in here. And we can actually use the same ID since this is in a block and this is in settings. So we'll have a text block and then we'll have a URL. So for type, we're going to change this to URL. ID, I'll make it URL. And for label, I'll make it URL. Save that and let's see what it looks like. So now if we go back to customize theme, you can see there's this add social link button below our section. And we can add as many social links as we want, and each one is going to have its own settings. So let's fill this in. All right, so I just added Facebook and Twitter, and now we're going to render this in our section. So let's go back to our section code. We'll go below the H1 tag, and we're going to use a for loop to loop through those blocks. So let's go for block in section.blocks. And then we need end for at the bottom. And now we'll do a anchor tag for each one for the href. We're going to get that URL setting, which would be block.settings. Whatever the ID is, which is URL. And then inside of the anchor tag, we'll put the text setting, which was block.settings.text. And now we should see our social links on the page. There they are. So now let's add a second kind of block. Let's go back to our code. And below this, I'll just copy everything. And this second block, I'm going to call paragraph. And for type, I'll put paragraph. And then for paragraph, we're going to need a larger text area. So I'll change the type to text area. And then we're not going to need a URL field, so we'll get rid of that. And now back within our settings, you can see the add social changed to add block. And if you click that, you can select what kind you want to add. And we'll add a paragraph. And then we can put our paragraph text in here. And now there's a problem. It's rendering our paragraph in an anchor tag, so we have to handle that kind of block differently. And to do that, you can do an if-else statement, or you can do a switch statement. So let's just do an if-else. Let's go if, and we're going to use that type that we added to each block. So if block.type is equal to social, then we want to handle it this way. Else if block.type is equal to paragraph, then we want to handle it another way. End if, and then within the paragraph one, we'll just do a p tag. So let's copy this. We'll get rid of the href, change it to a p, and there we go. It's now a paragraph. One thing you might have to do is display your social links in your paragraph somewhere completely different. And it's a little sloppy, but the way you have to do that is separate for loops. So maybe I want the paragraph above the h1. I would go up here, do a for loop, look for the paragraph, and then render it. And then down here, I would just look for the social one. So I'd delete the else if. And now they'll be in two separate places. There we go. Paragraph up top, social links below. The next property is app blocks, and app blocks allow other apps to inject code into your section. So this is super easy to add to our block. We just have to go to our blocks and we'll add a new one. And for type, you're just going to put the special code, which is @app. And that's all you got to put for this block. And then to render it up here, let's just do it with the paragraph loop. We'll go else if block.type is equal to @app. Then we just want to render the block. And it looks just like this. The next property is max blocks, and this allows you to set a limit on how many blocks can be added to your section. So let's go ahead and add that. We'll go at the bottom here, and I'll just go max blocks is going to be equal to 3. So if you go back to customize theme and refresh, you can no longer add anymore. The next property on the list is presets. This allows us to define default settings for our section multiple times, so it could be added in different ways to our theme. So let me show you that. Let's go back and let's find our presets, and we're just going to add one more. And this one, I'll call it red custom section. And now we're going to add settings to this. So let's go settings, and this time it's going to be an object, and we define the default settings in here. So we have a text field, so let's do text. And text on the default one will be default text. And then we'll go to the second one down here, the red custom section, and do settings also. And this one will have a red text. Let's save that and see what we did. So now I'm back in Customize Theme. I'm going to remove our section, and now I'm going to go Add Section and search for it. And now we have two different versions of it. And if I do default, it's going to have the default text. And if I do the red one, it's going to have red text. And you can also define blocks in here. So let's try that out. So let's go to default and we'll add blocks. And blocks is going to be an array. And for each one, you have to say what type it is. So let's go type is going to be paragraph. And then we'll add another block. And this type is going to be social. And we'll also define the settings in here also. So let's add settings and it'll be an object. And then you do the settings. So for URL, I'm going to do https://twitter.com. And for text, I'll do Twitter. And now these two blocks will appear when I add the default custom section. So let's try it out. So I'm going to remove the existing one and then add it again. Let's look for default custom. And now I add it and we get default text and two blocks added. The first one we didn't define settings, so it's empty. And the second one has Twitter and twitter.com. Coming down, the next property is defaults. This allows you to define default settings for when it's hard rendered. We'll get into that a little bit later. Below that is locales. This allows you to do multi-language stuff within your sections. So let's try that out. So let's go back in here and we'll add locales. And then we have to specify what language we're doing. So EN would be for English. And then in here we can put keys and values. So let's go text is going to be equal to hello. And then we'll do another one for Spanish. So let's copy that. And this would be ES. And we'll put hola in here. And now we'll make use of this at the top of our section. So let's go up. And to use it, we'll just put it in a p tag. So you're going to do brackets. And then the key you defined, ours was text. And then you're going to do a bar and then T for translate. And now it should render that text in our section. So if we go back and refresh, we get hello. And if we change the language of our store, so say I change this to Spanish, now it's going to show hola instead. So that's how you can do multi-language stuff in your section. So the last two properties are enabled on and disabled on, and these allow you to restrict where your section can be rendered on your store. So let's try it out. Let's go to the bottom and add enabled on. And then we're going to restrict it by template type. So let's go templates. And we'll say, hey, this can only be used on the page template. So now if we refresh, it's automatically going to remove that section since it can't be used on the home page. But if I did go to the page template, I'll be able to add it here, no problem. So that's how you can restrict based on template, and disabled on just does the inverse. So I could go disabled on page, and now it's going to work on every template except for the page. So now if I refresh, it's going to be removed from the page template, but if I go back to home page, we'll have it again. So next we have to talk about styling your section. So there's really three ways you could do this. One would be to add it to your theme style sheet, and that gets loaded globally. The second would be to inline the styles in our HTML. And the third would be to use this style sheet tag. And what's cool about this tag is it's going to take the styles within it and add it to the head. And that way you're not loading styles for sections that you're not using on a given page. So let's try it with the style sheet tag. Let's go back to our section. And I'll just go above the schema and I'm going to add style sheet. And now we can put styles in here. So let's go .custom section, which is the class that we added to the wrapper element. And we'll just go background is going to be gray. And maybe we'll add some padding on the top and bottom. So let's go 60 pixels, 0. And now if you refresh, it has those styles. And there's a problem with the style sheet tag. You can't use liquid within it, so you won't be able to access any of your settings within the style sheet tag. So to get around that, for styles that need access to your settings, you'll inline them in your HTML. So let's add another setting for the text color. So we'll go right here. This time the type is going to be color. The ID will be color. And the label will be text color. And we're going to add another property called default, and this allows you to define a default value for this setting. So by default, I'll just make it black, which is 0000000. And now we're going to use this setting inlined up here. So let's go to the H1 and we'll go style is equal to, and we'll go color is going to be section.settings.color. And now that setting should be hooked up, so let's try it out. So now back in customize theme, I have this text color and I can adjust it and it's gonna affect the text color. You also have the same thing for JavaScript. It's gonna move it up to the head, so let's do that. So let's add the JavaScript tag. And then let's just alert something inside here. We'll just go, hey. And now if I refresh the page, I get hey. And this is going to work the same as the Stylesheet tag where you can't use any liquid inside there. So if you need to get access to the specific instance of the section or use any of the settings from down here, you'll do that in a normal script tag. So let's just get rid of this. And to get access to the section, it's going to be document.querySelector. And then it's going to be ID Shopify-section-, and then you get the section ID like this. And that's going to go ahead and grab your section. So if we go back, we can see it's being logged right here correctly. So now we're going to talk about section groups, and these allow you to define different areas where your sections can be rendered. So we already have 3 in our home page, believe it or not. We have the header section, we got the template section, and then we got the footer section. So we can add our own custom section. So let's get started doing that. We're going to have to create a new file inside of the sections folder, and I'll just call it special section.json. And then we'll open up some brackets within here, and we have to add 4 properties. So let's add a name, and we'll just call it special section. We have to add a type, and for a custom section, it's going to be custom dot whatever you want it to be named. So custom dot special works for me. Next, we have to define what sections are going to be in here, and we can just leave that blank for now. And we also have to declare what order those sections go in. So we go order, and I'll just leave that an empty array. So let's save that. And now we have to render that within our theme file. So let's look for theme. And right here, you can see we're rendering the header group. So let's render our special one below it, which I called special section.json. So save that. And now we have our special section right here, and we can add sections to it. And if you do go to the documentation for this, for section types, you can do header, footer, aside, or the custom one that we did. So just make note of that. And now we can restrict our section so it can only be added to our special section. And you can do that just like we did before. So let's go back here, go to the bottom, find disabled on. Let's change it back to enabled on. And instead of restricting it based on template, let's change it to groups. And we'll say, hey, this can only be used on custom.special. And now if we go back, you'll see our section is removed from the template section since it's no longer allowed there. And we can now add it within our special section. And now let's talk about sections that can't be removed, like this header. You can see it's impossible to get rid of it. So it's easy to do. All you got to do is remove the presets. So let's go back to our section and delete presets. And now the user won't be able to remove the section, but they also have no way to add it. So to fix that, we have to specify that we want to render it. And there's 2 ways you can do that. The first way is to add it to our section group. So we could go inside sections right here and just define one called main. And main is going to have a type where we put the name of our section, which was custom section. And we could also define the settings in here. We could go settings and say by default, text is going to be equal to hard rendered. And now since we added it up here, we have to add it to our order array. So we want the first section to be main, which is what we called it. This could be anything right here. So now if we go back, you can see our custom section is in here and we can't get rid of it. And we have that default setting that we declared in the section group. And then the second way to hard render it is to put it directly where you want it to go. So we have to go back and modify our schema a little bit. Let's make it so it can be placed anywhere again. And then let's go to our theme file. And instead of rendering the special section, we're just going to render the section itself, which is called custom section. And now it's hard rendered right below our header group. So now to add default settings to this, we could use that defaults property, which we skipped over earlier. They actually made a typo right here. It's just default, not defaults. So let's give that a try. Let's go back and we'll add default. And then we'll add default settings. And we'll say that the text is going to be coding with Robbie. And now the text is set to coding with Robbie by default. And then one last thing I wanted to make you aware of is that sections that come with your theme are likely using translations for their labels. So if we pull up another section from this theme, say footer, and we look at their schema, You can see where the labels are. They have this T, sections, footers, settings, blah, blah, blah. And what that's doing is pulling the appropriate text for the given language. And it comes from the locales files, which are located up here. So if we went to English and we would find that key and it would give us the text, and then say we go to Spanish, it's going to be different text. So you can use these files within your labels. And that's not specific to Shopify sections. You can use that all over your theme. And that's Shopify sections. So I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a bunch. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.